As an answer to popular demand, we are having ourselves today a lecture on the subject of love, lovemaking, love relationships in the times of Corona. I hope you're happy, Sabolj. He kept bugging me the entire time. First of all, thank you all for coming. I am Blandine. This is Mahasiddha Yoga School from Thailand, as most of you know. So good that you all came. And I guess it's a subject that never loses its juiciness and validity, no matter how far along the path we might be moving. Now, one thing that I want to sort of put as a baseline of this lecture, which actually also Sabolj, who's being mentioned today a lot, pointed out in one of the questions and answers sessions, which is that Corona or not, basically nothing has changed. In terms of tantric principles, we are talking about the exact same principles as we usually do. So you might find yourself currently in a specific situation where it might be helpful to refer back to these principles and remind yourself of them, but they are the same nevertheless. Sabolj was making this comment in that questions and answers session that basically I was answering to somebody asking about keeping the attraction going while being very much on top of each other during Corona times, and I basically answered the same as I would in any other Tantra lecture. So he was like, oh, so it is actually the same. Yes, it is the same. The principles of Tantra don't change just because we have a little bit of an interesting situation. They just are basically helpful remedies for whatever situation we might find ourselves in. Now, why are we having this specific talk? Well, to put it simple, maybe divorce rates are going up quite significantly everywhere in the world. So it might be, well, that might actually be a good thing in some cases, that it is coming to the end of something that might have already been not anymore so alive. But I believe in many cases it wouldn't need such a dire consequence of such a relatively small impact. So I want to address a little bit from this viewpoint of Tantra how we might be able to handle those cases that would deserve a bit more of a try. And one of the things that I want to sort of give as a first thought is that we, in times when we consider to end a relationship or to take a break or to do something a little bit more consequential, let's say, usually or quite often there is an illusion within that moment that we have fallen out of love. It is even something that I hear a lot in my psychological practice, that couples feel like, okay, maybe we are just not anymore so much in love as we used to be. So there is this idea that you can fall out of love. Now, from a tantric viewpoint, obviously you could be tuned in or out the specific resonance of love. That is definitely possible. But considering that two souls meet and feel a specific love connection of whatever way between them, that is something that has a certain lasting capacity to it. And then this whole falling in and out of love, as we call it, we are actually much more falling in and out of other things than love. So in these times right now, maybe we are falling out of patience with the other one. Maybe we are falling out of attraction to the other one. Maybe we are falling out of clarity about what we want together or what is going on currently between us. Maybe we fall out of communication, out of understanding each other. And then this falling out of, let's say, certain dimensions that the relationship rests on is then overshadowing the love that is, let's say, a more of an eternal frequency within that connection. So one thing that I would definitely invite you to consider from a tantric viewpoint is to consider the specific connection and level of relationship that is determined by your soul, and that doesn't need any specificities. It doesn't need you to engage in a particular way. It doesn't need you to ever make love. It doesn't need you to have, I don't know, close the toothpaste after you're done with it, or I don't know what else things you have in your household that are important to you. So at the level of the soul, we find a connection that is absolutely not phased, not affected in any negative way by the ebbs and flows, the different changes that we have in our day-to-day life within our connection. But then, of course, there are the pillars that the relationship rests upon, like how do we communicate with each other? What are the values that we share? Do we feel a certain degree of attraction that allows us to actually engage romantically? Is it a friendship love? Is it maternal, fraternal love? What is going on there? Of course, this is very much determined by these aspects that can be fluctuating. So I want you to keep in mind these two dimensions. On one level, the love that can't be touched and that is never, let's say, on the chopping block. It is never threatened by these sort of outer changes. But then, of course, there is the being of the relationship, the entity, the construct, the organism of the relationship that does need our attention in a specific way. Now, I want to go in this lecture basically through 3 major points. One of them is, or maybe 4, let's see. One of them is the ground-based attitude in order to go through these times of, let's say, having our routine and the ways that we know things to be affected, which is the attitude of transformation, one of the basic attitudes within the tantric practice. And then I want to look a little bit into the different, let's say, practical approaches towards what happens if your relationship is affected by you guys hanging out too much at the moment, or being sort of locked into one common space, or what can you do practically if you are far apart and don't have the possibility at the moment to meet with the regularity that you would normally would. Let's address first this attitude of transformation. Now, the, let's say, biggest problem to at least start with within this corona situation that we are finding ourselves in is that we are sort of unhappy with it and commonly have a certain conflict around it. So either we are too far apart or we are too close together, but somehow we feel to a certain degree forced into the situation. And it doesn't seem that we have much of a choice, much of a freedom in how we are experiencing this. But actually the first thing from a tantric viewpoint to consider is to consider this disruption of your normal routine, of your normal patterns, of the known, of the common, as something that can have a very positive effect upon your relationship. So you are now put into a situation very well calculated. If you go back to the lecture about Dharma that we recently had, it is a perfect placement that you currently have, the universe putting you exactly into this spot in order to become as fast as possible liberated, or in order to become, if you want to put it in other words, as fast as possible deeply aware of who you truly are. So in Tantra, this is a generalized viewpoint. Anything that you might experience is given to you as a lesson, is given to you as something that will carry, if learned, as a major consequence, a huge leap forward towards your own enlightenment, towards your own freedom, towards your own inner truth. From this perspective, this entire occurrence, with whatever difficulty it might carry for you at the moment, is to be looked upon as an opportunity. Something that has shown up in order to give you something good. It is not just doors closing at the moment, but it is a lot of doors opening into a new viewpoint, a new attitude, changed setup within your relationship, a challenge that you can now go through together and see where you're at, a checkpoint, a reality check, if you will. So try to, first of all, focus on what is possible, what can be done, what can be learned, rather than sort of pitying and being concerned about the things that might not be so available right now. Bottom line of this little speech: learn your lesson. Look into that first. As just considering that, if you just let that sink in, the idea of learning your lesson within all of this, you get to understand that the focus is on you in this entire scenario. Whatever you're currently going through within your couple, learn your lesson. This is valid anytime within Tantra, but for sure now, where certain things might be triggered and you might be like, okay, wait a second, but my lover is not present enough, but my lover is too present enough, but my lover is doing this not correct on that level, and this and this and that. Turn the scope of your interest towards yourself and ask yourself, what is my lesson here, and how can I proceed to learn it as deeply as possible. First reflection that you can take is, what is your lover mirroring for you right now? What do you find particularly maybe annoying or difficult within your relationship right now? What do you feel is the other one, in your point of view, not doing correctly? And then look back at you within that. As I said just now, if the other one is annoying, maybe they are just reflecting something towards you. Maybe in the end of the day, you are not as purposeful, confident, loving, affectionate, and erotic as you thought yourself to be. Maybe there's something that can be learned here. In this way, you, let's say, tilt the entire relationship, or you redirect the entire flow within the relationship towards becoming transformative, making the giving, you could say, to the organism of the relationship meaning and purpose, making the situation that you're currently in into something that carries deep meaning and can allow you to grow in a wonderful way. In this way, you are already setting yourself up for a wonderful effect in the future as well. If you're taking this lesson now and you approach it in an active and an enthusiastic way, you can sow a seed for a much stronger couple later on. Once everything comes back to normal, the two of you have learned your lesson and therefore are now ready to go with the enthusiasm and with the euphoria of being again back into a world where we have a bit more of a degree of freedom, maybe, of moving around and so forth. But in this way, you have used this occasion as something that will bring you out stronger, namely with deeper understandings, with lessons learned, rather than having your relationship now being traumatized by a passive attitude, by an attitude of, oh yeah, let's hope this is soon over. Then once it is over, your relationship will now need to, first of all, use a whole lot of time to recuperate everything it lost within this crisis. So try to understand the favor that you do to yourself and to your relationship by switching to this active transformative viewpoint. Moving from possibly a downward traumatizing movement that then needs to be taken care of and healed once we are done with all this, as compared to a movement of deep transformation and creating together something extremely powerful, which will then even blossom more once we are back to normal. Now, the major problem while you are together, as we have this option for quite a few couples that are sitting sort of on top of each other right now. Some of us are lucky enough to have at least separate rooms or something that gives you at least a minimum of space. Nevertheless, sharing a space, even just being in the same house together, even if that is a big house with a huge garden and possibility to take walks around and I don't know what, it will create a certain pressure onto your relationship. If you go back to what I said in the beginning, that we don't so much fall out of love, but we fall out of other things, typically what we fall out of when we are hanging out too much in these times and we sit on top of each other is, first things first, we fall out of transfiguration. We fall out of elevated viewpoint, a positive viewpoint, an adoring viewpoint towards our beloved. When that happens, next thing that happens is attraction goes down. Once you cannot adore and admire your beloved anymore and you can't see them for the magical goddess and godlike being that they are, it is not anymore as juicy, tasteful, and amazing to maybe consider some erotic interactions with them. Or those might then also lose in intensity, lose in depth, lose in intimacy as your attraction goes down. So transfiguration goes, therefore attraction goes, therefore erotic intimacy at least suffers, and in some cases also is simply out of the window. Another big aspect that we tend to fall out of when we spend excessive time together is patience. We tend to have inside of us a certain contingent of patience and compassion for the other one. And then once they've used that up, okay, you've been, to my judgment, impossible for 10 times. 10 times were for free. The 11th time, I've had enough. Now that we are sitting on top of each other, to reach 10 times is usually quite easy. It's with just a few movements through the house, your patience might be already used up. Which then, when the actual problems hit, you don't have patience anymore. So now we've wasted our patience on open toilet seats and crumbs on the kitchen table. And once the big issue, namely, why are we not being erotic with each other, is hitting our awareness, we don't have patience to deal with it. So therefore, let's look at a few solutions in order to bridge this general, let's say, set of challenges that we might hit in this situation. Now, the game of polarity, as it is looked upon in Tantra, the polarity between two souls, between two beings, between masculine, feminine, between simply me and the other. It is a very delicate game that is basically, you could say, could be boiled down to being the art of knowing when to be together and when to be apart. And then also how to spend the time together and how to spend the time apart. So when you're sitting on top of each other right now, this is a major, let's say, thing to take into consideration. Look very wisely and preferably together at this problematic. When shall we be together? When shall we be apart? How shall we spend our time together? How shall we spend our time apart? Once you face the reality of this as a couple together, you stop resisting the fact that, as everybody in this world, you have moments where you just shouldn't be together And this doesn't mean that you don't have a Romeo and Juliet-like love story to you, but simply by the nature of things, there's time to be spent together and time to be spent apart. Once the couple approaches this actively and in agreement with one another, simply acknowledging that each of us needs space, and therefore it is very wise to take that space, best would be, before you are falling out of patience, out of attraction, out of etc., etc. So consider this just as a given. There needs to be space apart. There needs to be time apart. In whatever way you can arrange that. If you're living in a one-bedroom apartment, you might need to come up with a very interesting, complex schedule of how you share that space in order for the two of you to have a little bit of time apart where you are simply focusing on you and spending good quality alone time. This applying space, giving time will hopefully lead to have moments of reconsideration, both of who you are and of what and who the couple is, who the other one is for you and to you. Once you see your beloved all the time, just moving past in whatever banal moment of your life, they tend to become sort of like blending into the background. They become like a decorational plant in your apartment. And then if the decorational plant is losing too many leaves and making too much fuss and wanting something from you, it's becoming very annoying. So make sure that the other one never moves into this banal place within your life. This might not necessarily be very agreed upon by everybody listening, but I would always consider it better to be at least in conflict with one another than to be utterly indifferent of one another. It was said by my teacher once that the opposite of love is not hate, but it is indifference. And this I would very much consider in these times. It is better that you talk about stuff, that you air out things, of course, hopefully not in a very destructive way, but it is better you deal with each other than that you sort of come to this place where the other one is something that you get used to, like you get used to a back pain. But rather be in each other's face about things that need to be handled. That being said, if you take care of the polarization within your space, where you make enough time apart and also have good quality time together that you use in a conscious and beautiful way, it might even reduce dramatically the amounts of fights and annoyances and so forth that you might have with one another. Very practical. Give it a clear schedule. Meet only within the scope of the schedule that you set. Feel in your heart how many times per week, how many hours within a day, is it really beneficial for the two of you to spend time together? Then when you spend time together, do good stuff. Do things that are beautiful and enriching to the relationship. May it be to even just do something simple as having dinner together, watching a movie together, or whatever thing you do, but do it in a celebrative way. Dress up, take a shower for a change. Do a little preparatory meditation. Charge the meeting with intention. Bring elements to the table that move that meeting out of the banal and into the special. Create special moments together, especially if already your relationship is burdened by the banality of sharing the same common space. Maybe having a bathroom together that sometimes you will inevitably smell that the other one is a human being and inevitably will have their hair float around in places that you don't want them to float around and so forth. So even if this is already burdening your relationship, then don't bring those sort of commonalities and banalities into the common space with each other. But make those moments very special. Make deliberate dates, at least a few times per week. Take some time and make a date with each other. And put candlelight and beautiful music and slow dance in your living room and whatever brings romanticism and beauty and wonder to your relationship. So this is definitely something that should be considered a baseline, something that like I wouldn't make a compromise around having such time together. Now, while you're being apart, spend your time wisely as well. Namely, doing things that recharge your own pole, that recharge your own identity. For example, doing things that make you feel particularly wonderful, beautiful, and feminine as a woman. Things that make you feel strong and purposeful and directional as a man. Do things that really touch your soul and that open your heart and your being, also when you're alone. Try to sort of make this a dance between the two of you, where then you go apart and then you train already to come back together again. You go apart and you're immediately already on the job of building yourself in order to meet even more fully, even more deep, even more beautiful and intimate next time you meet. One more thing that I would very much suggest for you to do in this moment is to look into and even make a list of things that you would always want to have done within the couple, and use this time to actually do them. If you were always thinking of learning something together, studying something together, if you were always wanting to introduce, I don't know what novelty into your life, into your bedroom, into your whatever it is, consider to do this now. Who knows when you will have all this amount of time together again. Address issues that need to be spoken about and figured out together. Do it in a good way before you start fighting and before you start to get on each other's nerves. Use this time very wisely in order to grow as a couple deliberately. And then combine it with the polarizing aspect of taking space and taking that space very consciously with the aim of recharging your own pole, your own soul, your own heart, while you're apart from one another. Hey guys, if you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content on spirituality, Tantra, and more.
And if you want to sign up for our online classes or for our retreats, you can see our website on the description below.